One text, 7 words, and suddenly I realized my parents were lying to me. Before starting the story, please subscribe and like the video and listen through end for chill. Dinner with my parents was supposed to be simple. That alone should have warned me. We were seated at our usual table, corner booth, soft yellow lighting, the kind of place that tried too hard to feel intimate. My father was already halfway through his second glass of wine. My mother was carefully cutting her salmon into precise, symmetrical pieces, like she always did when she was nervous. I noticed that too late. They were smiling, too much, asking questions that sounded rehearsed. "So," my father said, leaning back in his chair, "how's work been lately?" Work. The word landed heavy. I'd learned over the years that when my parents asked about my work, it was never out of interest. It was reconnaissance. Busy, same as always. My mother's eyes flickered toward my father for half a second. A silent exchange. A signal. That's when my phone vibrated. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something, instinct maybe, made me glance down. Unknown number. Get up and leave. Don't say anything to your parents. My heartbeat stuttered. I read it again, then again. A chill crept up my spine, the kind you feel when your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Unknown number. No explanation, no follow-up, just an order. My first thought was that it was a prank. The second was that it was a mistake. The third, the one I didn't want to acknowledge, was that whoever sent this knew exactly where I was and who I was with. My mother cleared her throat. "Is everything okay?" I looked up. Both of them were watching me now, studying my face. "Yes," I said quickly, "just work." Line number 1 of the night. I slipped my phone into my pocket, my fingers trembling. Get up and leave. Don't say anything. Who sends something like that? And why did it feel like a warning instead of a threat? For a few seconds, I stayed frozen, trapped between politeness and survival instinct. If I stood up abruptly, they'd ask questions. If I stayed, whatever this was, I might regret it. I remembered something an old mentor once told me. If your instincts scream and logic whispers, listen to the scream. I pushed my chair back. "I just realized I forgot something important," I said, forcing a smile. "I'll call you later, okay?" My father frowned. "You're leaving? We just ordered dessert." "I know, I'm sorry." My mother's lips tightened. She hated losing control of a situation. But neither of them stopped me. That was the part that stayed with me later. They watched me walk out like they'd expected it. The night air hit me like a slap. I barely made it to the sidewalk before my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Good. Don't go home. Get in your car and wait. My hands were shaking now. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Someone who knows what your parents are about to do." I swallowed hard. What are they about to do? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "Take everything from you." I sat in my car, engine off, staring through the windshield as memories replayed themselves in a new, horrifying light. The sudden interest in my finances, the casual questions about my accounts, the way my parents had insisted repeatedly that I let them help with legal paperwork last year, the way my mother had pushed a document across the table and said, "It's just a formality." My phone buzzed again. "They filed paperwork this afternoon. Power of attorney. Emergency clause." My blood went cold. "Emergency clause?" I typed. "They're planning to declare you unfit, financially unstable, mentally overwhelmed." I laughed out loud, a short, sharp sound that startled me. "That's insane," I muttered. "Is it?" the message replied. "Check your email, spam folder." I did, and there it was. A legal notification time-stamped 3 hours earlier. My name, their signatures, a petition filed without my consent. The world tilted. I thought back to dinner, the smiles, the wine, the rehearsed warmth. They hadn't invited me to reconnect. They'd invited me to distract me, to keep me occupied while the clock ran out. I typed with shaking fingers, "How do you know all this?" The response took longer this time, because I used to work for the lawyer handling their case. We met an hour later in a quiet parking lot. She stepped out of her car slowly, hands visible like she didn't want to scare me. "I'm not supposed to be here," she said, "but I couldn't let them do this." She showed me everything: emails, voicemails, draft documents. My parents hadn't just planned to take control of my finances, they planned to erase me. Their strategy was meticulous, years in the making. They documented every moment of stress, every late night, every complaint I ever voiced. They framed ambition as instability, independence as recklessness. They weren't worried about me. They were threatened by me. "You were never supposed to succeed without them," she said quietly. That sentence broke something open inside me. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I went to a lawyer, then another. By morning, the narrative had changed. Emergency injunction, counterfiling, evidence submitted. By the time my parents woke up, their plan was unraveling. I didn't confront them immediately. I waited. 3 days later, I invited them to dinner. Same restaurant, same table. My mother smiled, confident. "I'm so glad you wanted to talk." I slid my phone across the table. "Funny," I said. "That's what I thought too, before I found out you tried to steal my life." Silence. Pure, deafening silence. My father's face drained of color. My mother reached for the phone, hands trembling. "I can explain." "No," I said. "You can't." They lost the case. Every document was voided. Their lawyer dropped them. Family members started asking questions they couldn't answer. And for the first time in my life, my parents looked small. I walked away that night without raising my voice, without tears, without guilt. Because the hardest truth isn't that family can betray you. It's that sometimes they always planned to. I still think about that text sometimes. 7 words that saved my future. Get up and leave. Don't say anything to your parents. I didn't understand it then. Now I do. Some dinners aren't invitations. They're traps. And walking away, quietly, decisively, can be the bravest thing you'll ever do. I told myself it was over, that once the paperwork was burned, once the lawyers stopped calling, once my parents went quiet, I could return to my life like nothing had happened. That was the lie I needed to survive the first few weeks. The truth came later, slowly, the way rot spreads behind walls. It started with silence. My parents didn't call, didn't text, didn't send angry messages or desperate apologies. They simply vanished. At first, I welcomed it. Silence felt like peace, like winning. But silence has weight, and when it stretches long enough, it begins to press inward. I noticed it late at night, when the city noise dropped away and my thoughts got louder. I'd replay the dinner again and again, hunting for signs I'd missed. The way my mother had corrected the waiter twice over nothing. The way my father had ordered dessert before asking if I wanted any. The way they had watched me stand up. Not surprised, not confused, prepared. That realization changed something fundamental inside me. They hadn't reacted because they already knew the version of me that would leave. They'd been studying me longer than I realized. A month later, I started checking my locks twice, not because anything happened, but because my body insisted something might. I'd open emails and reread them, scanning for hidden meanings. I'd hesitate before sending texts, wondering how words could be twisted, archived, repurposed later. I stopped venting to friends, stopped posting online. Every expression of emotion began to feel like evidence. That was the cruelest part of what they'd done. They hadn't just tried to take control of my life, they taught me to distrust my own mind. Sometimes I'd wake up convinced I'd forgotten something important, an appointment, a deadline, a promise I never remembered making. I'd check my calendar obsessively, heart racing, searching for proof that I was still functional, still competent, still sane. Because that was the story they tried to write about me. And the most dangerous lies are the ones that almost fit. The voicemail came 3 months later. No warning, no lead up, just a notification. Mom, one new message. I stared at the screen for a full minute before pressing play. Her voice was soft, careful, almost loving. "We're worried about you," she said. "No hello, no apology. We hear you're isolating yourself, that you're not sleeping well." My stomach twisted. "We only ever wanted to help, and we still do. Whenever you're ready to talk, we'll be here." The message ended there. No accusation, no threat, just concern. Perfectly calibrated. I deleted the voicemail and immediately regretted it. What if I needed it later? What if that was proof? Proof of what? I didn't know. But fear doesn't need logic. It just needs momentum. The longer time passed, the harder it became to remember who I'd been before that dinner, before I started analyzing every reaction, before I wondered how easily people could rewrite a narrative if they wanted to. I caught myself rehearsing explanations in my head for things no one had asked me about. Why I work so much, why I live alone, why I don't talk to my parents. I imagined future conversations like depositions. Stick to facts, don't sound emotional. Emotion can be used against you. I'd learned that lesson too well. Sometimes I'd hear my mother's voice in my head, correcting, reframing, softening my experiences until they sounded unreasonable. "You're being dramatic. You always see the worst in people. You remember things wrong." Gaslighting doesn't end when the person leaves. It echoes. The final crack came accidentally. A former family friend, someone who'd quietly distanced themselves years ago, reached out late one night. "I don't know if you want to see this," they said, "but I think you should." It was an old document, years old, a contingency plan, not legal, not official, personal. My name appeared dozens of times. So did phrases like emotional volatility, poor long-term judgment, easily influenced. My parents had been building a case against me long before I ever suspected. They weren't reacting to who I'd become. They were preparing for the moment I stopped being manageable. That was the moment that finally broke the illusion. This wasn't betrayal born of fear. It was control disguised as concern. People think grief only happens when someone dies. They're wrong. There's another kind. The kind where the people you loved are still alive, still breathing, still capable of smiling at you, but the version of them you trusted never existed. I grieved parents who were never real. I grieved a childhood I now understood differently. I grieved the illusion of safety. And grief like that doesn't come with casseroles or sympathy cards. It comes quietly, in moments where you suddenly realize there's no one left to go home to. The text message saved me, but it also marked me. Because once you see how easily love can be weaponized, you never unsee it. I'm stronger now, calmer, sharper. But there are nights when I still think about that dinner, about how close I came to staying seated, about how obedience often looks like politeness, and how leaving, without a scene, without a word, was the first truly independent decision I ever made. Not every threat announces itself loudly. Some smile across the table, some pour you wine, some call themselves family. And sometimes survival begins with a vibration in your pocket and the courage to stand up before you understand why. I knew they'd try again. That certainty didn't come from evidence. It came from understanding them. People who crave control don't accept defeat. They reinterpret it. In their minds, the first attempt hadn't failed because it was wrong. It failed because it was premature, because I'd been warned, because someone interfered, which meant the next move wouldn't involve lawyers. It would involve people. It began subtly. A colleague pulled me aside after a meeting. "Hey, random question," he said, lowering his voice. "Are you okay?" I laughed, too quickly. "Yeah, why?" He hesitated. "Someone mentioned you've been under a lot of stress lately, that you might need some time off." Someone. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Within a week, the questions multiplied. HR asking if I wanted access to wellness resources, friends checking in out of nowhere, an old family friend texting, "Your parents are worried about you." They weren't coming for my money this time. They were coming for my credibility. The genius of their second move was that it didn't require my participation. They didn't accuse me. They expressed concern. Concern is unassailable. Concern sounds loving. Concern opens doors that accusations can't. They told people I was exhausted, that I'd been working too hard, that I'd become distant and paranoid after some legal stress. They never mentioned the attempted takeover. They reframed it as a misunderstanding caused by my fragile state. And the worst part? It was believable. Because trauma doesn't leave you polished, it leaves you tense, reactive, guarded. I started noticing it in people's eyes, the way they watched me now, quietly evaluating. Is he okay? Is this the instability they warned us about? Every defensive reaction became proof. Every denial sounded rehearsed. I was being trapped inside a story I couldn't correct without sounding like the villain. The letter arrived in a neutral envelope. No sender name, just an appointment reminder. Psychological evaluation, requested by concerned parties. I stared at it, pulse hammering. Concerned parties. They'd found a way around consent, again. This time through social channels, character statements, wellness checks, a network of quiet influence. I called the clinic. "There must be a mistake," I said. The receptionist paused. The referral came with extensive documentation. From who? I can't disclose that. Of course. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, not with fear, but with rage sharpened by recognition. They were doing it again, but cleaner, smarter. I won't pretend I was strong the whole time. There was one night, just one, when I considered letting it happen, letting them label me unstable, letting professionals manage me, letting go of the constant vigilance. There's a seductive comfort in surrender. But then I imagined the aftermath. My decisions questioned, my memories disputed, my future filtered through other people's approvals. A life where every boundary I set would be reframed as evidence of illness. That wasn't help. That was erasure. They underestimated one thing: me. Trauma teaches patterns, and once you see the pattern, you can map it. I documented everything, every text, every check-in, every coincidental concern that originated from the same circles. I found the overlap, the same three people repeating the same phrases, the same language appearing in different mouths. Withdrawn, erratic, not himself, scripted concern. I hired a forensic psychologist not to evaluate me, but to analyze the campaign against me. Her conclusion was chilling. She said, "This isn't spontaneous worry, it's coordinated perception management." There was a name for what they were doing. That alone steadied me, because unnamed things feel inevitable. Named things can be fought. I never confronted my parents. That was intentional. Confrontation would give them what they wanted: emotional footage, reactions, instability to point at. Instead, I disappeared strategically. New address, new routines, reduced digital footprint. I became boring, and boring is the enemy of control. When their concern escalated and I didn't respond, it exposed the truth beneath it. Concern that demands attention isn't concern, it's leverage. People started noticing. The final message came from my mother. Not angry, not desperate. Resigned. "You didn't have to make us look like monsters." I read it 3 times. She still believed I'd done this to them, that my autonomy was an act of cruelty. I didn't reply. Some conversations are traps even in silence. They never tried again. Not because they understood, but because they lost the audience. And that's when I learned the darkest truth of all. Some people don't want control for power. They want it to feel real, to feel necessary, to feel loved. And when you refuse to play your role, they don't grieve you, they rewrite you. I live with the consequences of that rewrite every day. But I also live free. And freedom, real freedom, doesn't feel victorious. It feels quiet, uneventful, unmonitored. The kind of quiet where your phone vibrates and it's just a notification, not a warning, not a command. Just life, finally unobserved. If that story gave you chill, drop a like, subscribe, and comment so I know you made it to the end. I've got another one. See you then.